Today we'll dive into Falls Around Her, a powerful 2018 film that explores Indigenous identity through the life of a musician seeking and healing. We'll look at how Indigenous representation was constructed authentically and whether there are old stereotypes that still linger in today's world. Indigenous stories in film are finally being told by Indigenous voices, and Falls Around Her is a perfect example of that. Directed by Darlene Nepose and starring Tantoo Cardinal, this film isn't just about tragedy and stereotypes. It's about a real person who struggles in identity, healing, and reconnection. In this video, I'll break down how Falls Around Her builds a fresh and authentic picture of Indigenous identity and why it matters so much in the bigger history of Indigenous representation on the big screen. The first scene I'll be examining is Mary doing her first show in the first scene of the movie.
Rise, rebel. Oh, 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 rise, rebel.
Just one more sec, kiddo. The audience is hypnotized.
Right after this moment, he throws the flower pot and proceeds to cuss out Mary for leaving the concert venue. I was unable to show this as it was against school rules to show him swearing in the project. The first scene in Falls Around Her immediately sets the tone for how Indigenous identity will be portrayed throughout the film. We see Mary, an internally successful Indigenous musician, performing a major concert. She's confident, powerful, and completely in control on the stage. This challenges traditional stereotypes that have often shown Indigenous people as either victims of history or disconnected from modern life. Instead, Mary is shown as a thriving contemporary artist, a clear rejection of outdated images of Indigenous people. Yet, even as she stands under the bright lights, there is an emotional tension. Mary's face shows signs of exhaustion and disconnection. Here, director Darlene Nepose uses narrative structure to subtly hint at the story's deeper conflict. Success in the outside world does not necessarily mean personal healing or connection to the cultural roots. This leads to why she leaves later on in the scene and ends up going on later in the story to her not wanting to play music anymore. Lighting plays a major role too. Harsh official lights shine directly on Mary on stage, creating intense brightness on her, but leaving the background in deep shadows. This would be an example of high-key lighting, as the scene is flooded with light, creating a bright and open-looking space, but can also be a bit of low-key lighting as well, as there's slight darkness and flooded shadows in the backness. This contrast symbolizes the pressure and exposure she faces, highlighting how fame has placed her under the spotlight. Sound and design further depends on the meaning. The crowd cheering is loud at first, but gradually fades into a dull roar, replaced by softer, ambitious sounds. This shift plays the audience inside Mary's emotional world. Through these techniques, the film shows Indigenous identity today isn't just about cultural pride, it's about navigating personal battles in a modern world that misunderstands what it's really like to be an Indigenous person, especially when they're successful. Now showing the second scene I will be examining, which shows a group of Indigenous people protesting.
It's time to warrior up.
This is our land. This is our home. This is our land. Yeah, this is our home. Our ancestors live here. Our children live here. Clean water. We need our home to be good for our children. We're Anishinaabe.
One of the most important scenes in Falls Around Her is the Indigenous protest. In this scene, we see a community of members standing together, holding signs, drumming, and speaking out to defend their land and their rights. This scene is critical for Indigenous representation because it shows Indigenous activism as organized and powerful and deeply rooted in community strength. It rejects older stereotypes where Indigenous characters were either passive or isolated. Instead of the film presents resistance as collective, determined, and essential to survival. The narrative structure of this protest scene is a moment where the personal and political sides of Mary's life start to overlap. Even though Mary originally returned to the land to heal privately in larger political struggles, her community faces pull back into active engagement with the world. The cinematography makes this message clear. The camera moves slowly through the crowd, often showing low angles, making the protesters look strong, grounded, and unmoved. This scene shows a eye-level shot and a high-angle shot, showing two levels of cinematography. Wide shots showing the group together in unity. No one is singled out, and everyone's a hero. And instead, it's showing that it's celebrated as a collected action. Lighting in this scene is natural and slightly overcast, matching the serious and determined tone of the protests, as it's in daytime. There's no artificial spotlighting or dramatization. The focus stays real and raw, grounding the action in realism instead of it being something else. And sound is incredibly important here. The rhythm and hand drums is steady and powerful, blending with chanting and shouting. And instead of using a Hollywood-style soundtrack to emotionalize the protests, the film lets Indigenous voices and traditional sounds fill the space naturally, giving major Indigenous representation. This choice centers Indigenous worldviews and cultural forms. The protest isn't shown as a chaotic or violent event, but as an expression of a community and a deep spiritual connection with their land.